Terry Andrew Davis was an American programmer who is most known for creating his own operating system, templeOS. The operating system had few names before coming to fruition. First was the J operating system, and after was named LoseThos, but in 2013, templeOS was released. But how templeOS came to be and what came after is where the story takes place. Before we get started, I did want to say that on my last video, it appeared that about 95% of you watching this video are not subs. So let's go ahead and drop that sub, and let's get started. Terry was born in Wisconsin, later to move to several states around the U.S. He was part of a big family, being the 7th of 8 children in his house. As a kid, Terry was fascinated by computers and even had the chance to use the Apple II in school. He also learned ASM, or assembly language, before he graduated high school, so with tech in the back of his mind, he heads to Arizona State University and acquires a bachelor's in computer engineering, as well as his master's in electrical engineering, all the while working at Ticketmaster as a programmer for fax machines until '96. March of '96 was when Davis began to have regular manic episodes, even delusions around aliens and government agents following him around. This led him to start acting out of character. Terry began to donate to charity organizations, which is something that he had never done before. Still believing that men in suits were coming for him, he skips town and travels south with no destination. In his mental state, Terry started to believe his car radio was communicating with him. Out of desperation, he dismantles his vehicle looking for tracking devices. He throws his keys, leaving himself stranded on the side of a highway in a desert. He begins to walk aimlessly, where he is then picked up by an officer. He managed to escape the patrol car and had broken his collarbone and then was taken to a hospital. At the hospital, Terry was given an x-ray for his collarbone. The doctors found something else on the x-ray, which Terry was convinced was alien artifacts. Distressed and worried, Terry flees the hospital to attempt to carjack a nearby vehicle. Before being able to do so, he is arrested and taken to jail. Terry, still desperate to get out, he tried to unlock his cell by stripping naked and breaking his glasses, shoving them into the electrical outlet. Unfortunately for him, this did not work. Terry was finally admitted to a mental hospital to get the attention he needed. He was admitted for 2 weeks. The following years were difficult for Terry. From '96 to 2003, he was admitted to a psychiatric ward every 6 months due to his manic episodes. Terry was such a gifted programmer, a truly intelligent person dealing with a very real mental health issue. After being diagnosed with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, Mr. Davis felt so guilty for being such a technology advocate atheist. He sought out to emulate Jesus by giving all of his possessions and living a nomadic lifestyle. In July of '96, Terry returned to Arizona with a plan to start a new 3D printing business, but when an accident involving a Dremel tool nearly set his apartment on fire, he had no other choice but to move in with his parents, who reside in Las Vegas. From then onward, he lived with his parents while in treatment with his health issues. It was often said that his communication was completely incomprehensible. However, when the conversations were centered around computers, it was always lucid. After the accident at his apartment, he begins to work on the J operating system, with the ambition to recreate the dynamic environment that used to exist when the Commodore 64 was around and when, quote, everyone was creating oddball software. 3 years later, he mentions the renamed project and directive by saying, "The primary purpose for LoseThos was for making video games. It has no networking or internet support. As far as I'm concerned, that would be reinventing the wheel," Davis says. Later, he claims to have direct communication with God and that God told him to build the successor to the Second Temple as an operating system. Thus enter templeOS, with bundled programs and biblical references like the game After Egypt, where the player travels to a burning bush that will generate a pseudo-random text, basically designed to be coded messages from God. Many of the features on the system, like 640 by 480 resolution and the 16 colorway display, were all explicit instructions from God. And in 2013, God's work is finished and templeOS is released. Terry posted online regularly throughout the creation of templeOS and had amassed a following within the programming world, and videos are still up now. He held himself in high regard and definitely believed in his own skills.
You want to know why I'm the best programmer in the world? I moved it backward, okay? I moved it backward. And that's why I'm the smartest programmer that's ever lived. I took something that wants to be clusterfucked and I made it simple. I took something that was clusterfucked and I made it simple and beautiful. That's what I did.
In many of his videos, he comes across very offensive, with constant swearing and use of racial terms, unfortunately, all symptoms of his illness. He was certainly gifted at programming, with templeOS having over 100,000 lines of code. A computer engineer had compared the development of templeOS to a one-man built skyscraper, and even believed he could have been the Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak if it wasn't for this illness. Terry began to feel like his medication was limiting his creativity, so he decided to stop taking his meds. At the time, though, he was still living with his parents, and they would only allow him to live at the house if he was taking his medication. They end up getting into an argument, and Terry then decides to go and live on his own. Terry moves out and is faced with periods of incarceration and homelessness. Some fans of his tried to help by bringing him supplies and even offering places to stay, which he always refused. In the later part of 2018, Terry makes his way to the Dalles, Oregon. He records and uploads his final video to YouTube. That video is still up today, by the way, and I'll leave a link in the description. On the 11th evening of August 2018, while walking alongside railroad tracks, Terry Davis was struck and killed by a Union Pacific train in the Dalles, Oregon. It's still not determined whether his death was suicide or was accidental. It's sad to think how often creativity is matched with mental illness, and this is why his family did not want his death to be in vain, which is why they asked people to donate to the organizations working to ease the pain and suffering that's caused by mental illness. On the templeOS homepage, they have donation links. I'd like to make sure I put those same links in the description to make sure that in sharing this story, I'm also making sure I honor his family and share those organizations. Thank you to everybody that has made it to this point in the video. If you enjoyed the video, don't leave without clicking the like and subscribe. And I also like to let you know that I stream on Twitch Tuesday through Saturday, so definitely make sure to follow me there to catch me live. Thanks for watching.
Well, I'm King Terry, and learned how to purify myself in a horribly impure environment. It's pretty rough living homeless and in a field outside a little town, and coming into their library, and it's a very pure town, and must have been an extreme shock to them to see such a horribly sick person come in here and pollute everything, and it was a lot of torture to snap me into an ability to handle purity for this job. There's a little castle over there. Let's see, where's that castle? There it is. Oh no! So, that's a little castle. I don't know. I really like this library. So, come here and use their computer and smoke out here. They must have been freaking out because such an impure person was in their presence. Oh well, I was clueless. Now I used to have a respect for purity. So, well, it's good to be king. Maybe. I think maybe I'm just like a little bizarre little person who walks back and forth. Whatever, you know. But